A city that didn't know how to be afraid. Columbus, Ohio. Autumn 1967. The city lived quietly and evenly, without hysteria, without tension, without any sense that something truly terrible could happen here. Not New York, not Chicago, not Detroit. Columbus was one of those places that never made national headlines. People talked about the weather, gas prices, the war in Vietnam, far away, distant, almost unreal, like something happening on the radio. In the evenings, women walked home alone. They locked their doors more out of habit than fear. Thin curtains covered the windows, hiding the light rather than protecting from the outside world. The city was not expecting a blow, and that was why it didn't notice someone had begun to study it. The first call. At 6:42 a.m., the dispatcher received the call. There's a woman here." The voice was unsteady, distant, as if the caller still couldn't believe what he was seeing. "She's not breathing." The patrol arrived quickly. The neighborhood was quiet, almost sleepy. A small house, a neat porch, no signs of forced entry. Detective Robert Hale stepped out of the car and immediately noticed the silence. Not tense, motionless. Inside the bedroom, everything looked too orderly. The bed neatly made, a small table by the window. No scattered belongings, no signs of a struggle. The woman lay on her back, and only when Hale leaned closer did he see it. A stocking. Thin, feminine, carefully tied into a knot. "Strange," one of the officers murmured. Hale said nothing. He stared at the knot, at how it was tightened, at how precisely the pressure had been applied. This wasn't an outburst. It was a decision. Most likely domestic. Later, during the briefing, familiar phrases filled the room. Possibly someone she knew. Possibly an accident. No signs of forced entry. The word murder was spoken carefully, as if it could contaminate the air itself. "Let's not panic," the chief said. "We have no grounds to talk about a pattern." Hale looked out the window. He saw the street, people walking, ordinary life. Serial crimes never begin with screams. They begin with silence, he thought. He was already nearby. While reports were being written, someone was walking the streets of Columbus. He knew these houses, knew the entryways, knew where lights went out early and where someone always left a night lamp on. He wasn't in a hurry. He didn't need to be. He understood the most important thing. Trust was the weakest point. No break-ins, no force. Just one step forward and the door was already open. The city pretends nothing happened. The newspapers mentioned it briefly. No headlines, no words like fear or killer. One tragedy, one woman, one house. Columbus exhaled. Women continued walking home in the evenings. Doors were still opened if the knock was polite. And the killer understood. No one was waiting for him. End of the chapter. That evening, Robert Hale stayed alone in his office. On the desk in front of him lay a photograph of the knot. He didn't know then that this was only the beginning, that the knot would become a signature, that a city unaccustomed to fear would learn it far too late. Some killers don't break into lives. They enter them quietly.
Patterns no one wanted to see. The second body was discovered 3 weeks later. Different neighborhood. different house, different life. The similarities were subtle, so subtle that most people missed them. No broken locks, no overturned furniture, no screams reported by neighbors. And once again, the stalking. Robert Hale stood over the scene longer this time, longer than protocol allowed, longer than his partner liked. "You're thinking the same thing, aren't you?" the partner asked quietly. Hale nodded. "I am." He didn't say the word pattern, not yet. Saying it would make it real. A city on the edge of denial. At headquarters, the mood was uneasy. 2 deaths were coincidence. 3 would be trouble. The reports were laid side by side, addresses circled, timelines drawn in pencil, lightly, so they could still be erased. These women didn't know each other, someone said. No shared workplace, no shared contacts. Exactly, Hale replied, which means the connection isn't them. The room went quiet. "You're saying..." "I'm saying someone is choosing them." No one liked how that sounded. The killer's calm. While the city debated definitions, the man responsible moved through his days unnoticed. He bought groceries, held doors open, smiled when spoken to. He understood something the police hadn't yet accepted. Panic would come later. Right now, people still trusted their instincts, and their instincts told them nothing was wrong. He didn't need to rush. Fear would do the work for him soon enough.
The third woman was younger. That detail changed everything. Now the newspapers hesitated. Headlines grew longer. Words like mysterious and unexplained appeared. Still careful, still restrained, but the city felt it. Women began double-checking locks. Porch lights stayed on longer. Neighbors listened more closely at night. Hale stared at the photographs spread across his desk. 3 stockings, 3 knots, identical. "He's practicing," Hale said softly, "and he's getting comfortable." Pressure without proof. The department wanted answers. The mayor wanted reassurance. The public wanted safety. But Hale had only instincts, and instincts didn't make arrests. "You don't catch someone like this with force," he said during one meeting. "You catch him when he slips." "And what if he doesn't?" someone asked. Hale didn't answer. End of the chapter. Late one night, Hale walked alone through a quiet neighborhood. Houses lined the street, identical and calm. Lamps glowed behind curtains. Somewhere, a radio played softly. Any one of these doors could open, he thought. And no one would hear a thing. The killer wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was blending in. And Columbus was finally beginning to understand. This wasn't an accident. It was a hunt. The shape of fear. By the winter of 1967, Columbus had changed. Not loudly, not all at once. Fear didn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It seeped in quietly, through routine, through hesitation, through the half-second pause before opening a door. Women began walking faster. Men waited up when their wives were late. Neighbors who once barely nodded now memorized each other's schedules. And still, there was no suspect. No face, no name. Detective Robert Hale sat through briefing after briefing, staring at the same board. Photographs, addresses pinned with red tacks, a city map slowly filling with invisible lines. "We need a description," the chief said. "Something solid." Witnesses offered fragments. Polite, well-spoken, didn't seem threatening. That was the worst part. "He doesn't frighten them at the door,"
Hale said. If he did, they wouldn't let him in. Someone asked the question no one wanted to answer. Then how does he get inside? Hale exhaled slowly. He asks. The women he chose. They weren't reckless. They weren't careless. They were ordinary. Divorced, widowed, living alone, working late shifts, trusting the idea that danger announced itself. Hale reviewed the files late into the night, reading between the lines. He's not hunting bodies, he thought. He's hunting isolation. Each woman represented a quiet life, one without witnesses. And each time, the killer left the same message. I was here, and no one stopped me. The city after dark. Patrol cars multiplied, but the streets felt emptier. Windows stayed dark. Phones rang unanswered. Columbus after sunset became a place of closed doors and unspoken rules. Don't open unless you're sure. Don't trust a stranger's smile. Don't assume it won't be you. And yet, somewhere in the city, someone moved freely through it all. He noticed the changes, the locked doors, the wary looks. They didn't upset him. They excited him. Fear meant attention, and attention meant power.
A mistake that wasn't enough. In January 1968, a woman survived. She told police about a man at her door, calm, polite, convincing. She remembered his voice more than his face. He didn't raise his hands, she said. He didn't rush me, he just stepped closer. She noticed the stalking too late. Her scream saved her. It was the first crack. Hale felt it immediately, the shift from myth to man. He's human, Hale said, which means he makes mistakes. But mistakes weren't arrests. The description was still vague. The city still full of men who fit it. The killer listens. He heard about the survivor on the radio, turned the volume down, sat still. For the first time, something close to irritation crossed his mind. Not fear, never fear, but awareness. They're getting closer, he thought, which means I have to be quieter. He didn't stop. He adapted. End of the chapter. Robert Hale stood alone in the evidence room, staring at the stocking sealed in plastic. It was such an ordinary thing, something sold in drugstores, something meant to be soft. He realized then what frightened him most. This wasn't rage. This wasn't chaos. It was control. And whoever was doing this hadn't finished yet. Chapter 4. When the city holds its breath. By the spring of 1968, Columbus was exhausted. Not relieved, not safer, just tired of waiting. The calls to police increased, suspicious knocks, unfamiliar faces, footsteps on porches that led nowhere. Most of them were nothing. All of them felt like something. Fear had become background noise. Pressure from above. At headquarters, the tone had shifted. We need progress, the mayor said behind closed doors, or we need quiet. Neither was possible. Detective Robert Hale sat through meetings where words like reassurance and public confidence mattered more than evidence. The case board remained unchanged. No name, no arrest, no certainty. We can't protect everyone forever, Hale said. We need him to move. The chief looked at him. And if he does? Hale didn't answer. He knew what movement meant. The last pattern. Then suddenly, the rhythm broke. Weeks passed, then months. No new bodies, No new calls that led to scenes sealed in yellow tape. Some officers whispered relief. Others whispered worse things. Maybe he's gone. Maybe he stopped. Hale didn't believe in maybes. Killers like this didn't quit. They relocated. A man who simply left. The files showed it clearly now. A cluster of addresses, a tight time frame, a method repeated until it wasn't needed anymore. He learned what he came to learn, Hale said quietly to his partner, and then he moved on. There were no goodbye signs, no escalation, no final message. Just absence, the most unsettling ending of all. The city tries to heal. Columbus wanted normal back. Lights beamed again, locks loosened. People told themselves the danger had passed. Newspapers stopped using the word stalking. The case slipped from the front page to the archives. But Hale noticed the habits that stayed. Women still checked windows twice. Men still listened for the sound of a knock at night. The city had learned something it couldn't unlearn. Unfinished business. Hale boxed the evidence himself. Photographs, reports, carefully labeled bags. He knew what an open case felt like. It wasn't hope, it was weight. Someone else will find him, his partner said once. Somewhere else. Hale nodded, though it brought no comfort, which meant someone else would pay the price. End of the chapter. On his last night assigned to the case, Hale walked past the quiet streets once more. The houses looked the same. The doors were closed. The city breathed again. But somewhere beyond Columbus, a man carried what he had learned. Patience, control, silence. And that knowledge, Hale understood, was far more dangerous than anger.
A name years too late. Time did what fear could not. It moved on. By the early 1970s, the Columbus case had become a file number, referenced occasionally, never resolved. New officers joined the department who had never walked those streets in 1967, never stood over a quiet bedroom wondering how a door had been opened so easily. Detective Robert Hale retired with the case still open. He carried it with him anyway. Another city, another pattern. Years later, in a different state, police arrested a man named Carl Eugene Watts. The details surfaced slowly at first. Strangulation, compliance, victims who never screamed until it was too late. Officers in another department began noticing something familiar. Stalkings, calm behavior, no forced entry. Someone pulled an old file from storage. Columbus, Ohio, 1967, 1968. The similarities were impossible to ignore. The realization. Hale was already retired when the call came. He listened without interrupting, seated at a kitchen table that felt too quiet for the words being spoken. "We believe Watts was active in Columbus during that period," the voice said. "We can't prove every case, but the method matches." Hale closed his eyes. He thought of the knot, the careful pressure, the patience. "So that's his name," Hale said finally. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like confirmation. Justice without a verdict. Watts would never stand trial for the Columbus murders. Evidence had aged. Witnesses were gone. Time had erased what fear could not preserve. There would be no courtroom reckoning, no formal confession. Just a quiet addition to history. Another truth found too late to save anyone. What the city was left with. Columbus never held a memorial. There were no plaques, no ceremonies. But the echo remained. In the way doors closed faster than they once had. In the instinctive pause before trusting a stranger. In the unspoken rule passed from one generation to the next. Be careful who you let in. Final thoughts. Robert Hale folded the last document and placed it back into the box. A name had been given. A pattern understood. But some answers arrive without relief. The Columbus stocking strangler was no longer unknown. He was simply gone. And the city, like so many others, learned the hardest lesson of all. Some killers don't announce themselves. They ask politely. And sometimes that is enough.